In 1962, when To Kill a Mockingbird catapulted Gregory Peck to the height of fame, he became Hollywood's moral compass. The man who embodied Atticus Finch on screen seemed to carry that same quiet dignity in real life. With his calm demeanor and penetrating gaze, Peck appeared untouchable, a gentleman who never raised his voice or spoke ill of anyone. For decades, he maintained that reputation, even as Hollywood burned through scandals and feuds. But behind that serene exterior, Gregory Peck harbored intense resentments toward 5 men who pushed him to his breaking point. These weren't minor irritations or professional disagreements. According to multiple crew members, biographers, and Peck's own carefully chosen words in late career interviews, these conflicts cut deep enough to make Hollywood's saint confess something shocking. He truly despised these men more than anything. Marlon Brando. Gregory Peck and Marlon Brando should have been natural allies. Both were serious actors who emerged in the late 1990s. Both rejected the pretty boy roles Hollywood tried to force on them, and both had reputations for choosing meaningful projects. But when they finally worked together on the Missouri Breaks in 1976, their fundamental differences became impossible to ignore. Peck had been assured by United Artists that Brando had mellowed. The actor's notorious behavior on previous films, including Apocalypse Now, had made him nearly unemployable. But the producers swore Brando was ready to work professionally. Peck, who needed the paycheck and was intrigued by Arthur Penn's script, reluctantly agreed. The trouble started the moment they arrived in Montana for location shooting. According to script supervisor Elaine May, Brando showed up with a suitcase containing 3 bottles of bourbon, and bizarrely a toy piano he called his emotional transfer device. Every morning before filming, Brando would sit alone playing discordant notes, claiming he was finding his character's inner music. Peck, who arrived on set at 6 a.m. every day with his lines memorized and his character thoroughly researched, found Brando's methods incomprehensible. The contrast couldn't have been starker. While Peck studied every scene with director Arthur Penn, discussing motivation and subtext, Brando would wander in around 11 a.m., sometimes still wearing his hotel bathrobe under his costume. During one crucial scene where their characters confronted each other over stolen horses, Brando suddenly released a live pigeon he'd brought to set. As the crew scrambled to catch the bird, Brando turned to Peck and said, according to multiple witnesses, "That's what freedom looks like, Gregory. You should try it sometime." Peck's jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists. Cinematographer Michael Butler recalled that Peck walked off set without a word and didn't return for 2 hours. When he came back, he went directly to Arthur Penn and said quietly, "Either that man learns his lines and shows up on time, or I'm leaving this picture." The production limped along for another 6 weeks, but Peck and Brando barely spoke except when the cameras rolled. During breaks, they sat at opposite ends of the set. When the film wrapped, Peck left Montana without attending the wrap party. He later told Gary Fishgall, "Brando represented everything I despised about the new Hollywood. Talent without discipline is just chaos wearing a costume." Brando, for his part, dismissed Peck in a 1979 Playboy interview as a human mannequin who mistakes rigidity for craft. When asked about this comment years later, Peck's response was ice cold. "I learned something from Marlon," he said. "I learned that genius is no excuse for being impossible to work with." The 2 men never worked together again. When Brando died in 2004, a year after Peck, their mutual disdain had never softened. According to Peck's longtime agent, when Brando's name came up in conversation even decades later, Peck would simply change the subject or leave the room. Frank Sinatra. If Brando tested Peck's patience with artistic chaos, Frank Sinatra shattered it with pure arrogance. Their 1963 collaboration on Captain Newman, M.D., became legendary in Hollywood circles for all the wrong reasons. What should have been a prestigious drama about military psychiatry turned into a battlefield between 2 men with completely incompatible approaches to their craft. Peck had signed on first, drawn to the serious subject matter and the chance to work with director David Miller. When Universal added Sinatra to the cast, Peck's representatives reportedly tried to back out, but contractual obligations and financial penalties kept him locked in. From day one, the atmosphere on the Universal backlot was poisonous. Sinatra treated film acting as a sideline to his real career as a singer and performer. He famously preferred one-take performances, often showing up unprepared and relying on charisma rather than craft. Peck, who insisted on multiple takes to perfect each scene, found this approach insulting to everyone involved. According to assistant director Don Cranzi, the 2 men argued before they even shot their first scene together. The breaking point came during a complex emotional scene set in a military hospital. Peck had spent hours preparing, working with Miller on the character's internal struggle. Sinatra arrived 3 hours late, clearly having been drinking. When Miller asked for a rehearsal, Sinatra waved him off. "I don't rehearse," he said. "I perform." The cameras rolled. Peck delivered his lines with precision, hitting every emotional beat. Sinatra mumbled his way through the response, then, according to multiple crew members, deliberately whistled during Peck's close-up. Peck stopped mid-sentence. He stared at Sinatra for what felt like an eternity. Then he calmly walked to his trailer and locked the door. Production shut down for the rest of the day. David Miller, terrified of losing either star, spent 2 hours coaxing Peck back to set. When Peck finally emerged, he walked directly to Sinatra and said, loudly enough for everyone to hear, "This isn't a nightclub, Frank. We're making a motion picture. If you can't take it seriously, then leave." Sinatra's response, according to Variety's on-set reporter, was to laugh and take a long drag from his cigarette. "Relax, St. Gregory," he said. "Not everyone needs to suffer for their art." The nickname St. Gregory stuck, and Sinatra used it mockingly for the rest of the shoot. Peck never responded, maintaining an icy professionalism that somehow felt more cutting than any comeback could have been. They completed the film, but Peck refused to do joint publicity. When the studio arranged a press conference at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, Peck sent word that he was unavailable. Years later, when asked about working with Sinatra in a 1985 interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Peck chose his words carefully. "Frank was talented," he said, "but he treated our profession like a hobby, and that showed disrespect to everyone who took it seriously." Sinatra never publicly responded to that comment, but friends reported he was furious. The two men avoided each other at industry events for the next 3 decades. When Sinatra died in 1998, Peck issued a brief formal statement praising his musical legacy. Notably, he said nothing about Sinatra as an actor or colleague, Richard Burton. But if Gregory Peck's clashes with Brando and Sinatra were about professional standards, his hatred for Richard Burton cut far deeper. This wasn't about work methods or punctuality. This was personal, ideological, and according to those who witnessed it, genuinely venomous. Their first meeting took place at a 1958 Beverly Hills party hosted by producer David O. Selznick. Peck was already established as Hollywood's leading man with a reputation for serious, morally upright roles. Burton, fresh from his success in The Robe and breaking into Hollywood from the British stage, had a different reputation entirely. He was known for hard drinking, womanizing, and a theatrical arrogance that made even seasoned Hollywood egos seem tame. Burton arrived drunk, according to multiple party attendees. When someone introduced him to Gregory Peck, Burton looked him up and down and said, loud enough for half the room to hear, "So you're the man who makes morality profitable. Tell me, how does it feel to be Hollywood's favorite saint?" Peck's face, according to actress Betsy Drake, who was standing nearby, turned to stone. He nodded politely and walked away without responding, but Burton wasn't finished. Throughout the evening, he made increasingly pointed comments about Peck within earshot, calling him the most sanctimonious bore in cinema and suggesting that Peck's wholesome image was nothing but studio manufacturing. Over the next decade, Burton made disparaging Peck something of a personal hobby. In a notorious 1962 interview with Esquire magazine, Burton said, "Gregory Peck isn't an actor, he's a public service announcement in a dinner jacket." The man couldn't convey genuine human messiness if his life depended on it. These weren't casual remarks. Burton seemed genuinely obsessed with taking Peck down. According to biographer Melvin Bragg, Burton saw Peck as representing everything phony about Hollywood's self-righteous liberalism. Burton, for all his flaws, prided himself on being authentic about his vices. Peck's apparent perfection struck him as the worst kind of hypocrisy. The situation reached its peak in 1965, when both men were offered starring roles in a major Warner Brothers production about the Nuremberg trials. The project had been in development for years, and both actors were perfect for their respective roles. Peck read the script and was interested. Then he learned Burton was attached. According to production memos uncovered years later, Peck called the producers and said he would not work with Richard Burton under any circumstances. When pressed for a reason, Peck reportedly said, "I don't care to spend 6 months on set with a man who drinks himself stupid and then lectures others about authenticity. Find someone else." Burton, when informed of Peck's refusal, exploded. In a phone call with his agent that was partially overheard by the agent's secretary, Burton reportedly shouted, "Gregory Peck is everything wrong with this business. He's a coward hiding behind a good reputation." The project collapsed within weeks. Neither actor ever publicly commented on what happened, but industry insiders knew the truth. Years later, in a 1979 interview with British journalist David Lewin, Burton admitted, "I hated Gregory Peck, not for who he was, but for what he represented. Every time I saw his face, I saw my own failures reflected back. He was the conscience I spent my whole life trying to drink away." When Burton died in 1984, the press approached Peck for comment. His response was brief and devastating in its formality. "Richard Burton was a tremendous talent," he said. "His work in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf proved what he was capable of. That's all I have to say." The subtext was clear. Burton had talent but wasted it. For Peck, there was no greater sin: John Wayne. Yet the next name on Gregory Peck's list shocked even those closest to him. If his hatred for Burton was about personal contempt, his feelings toward John Wayne represented something even deeper. This was about two completely incompatible visions of America itself, and the gulf between them was unbridgeable. On the surface, Wayne and Peck should have been allies. Both were leading men who defined their era, both were box office titans, and both represented American masculinity to millions of fans. But beneath that surface, they embodied opposing poles of American political identity during the most divisive period in modern history. Wayne was a vocal hawk on Vietnam, a supporter of conservative causes, and proudly aligned with what he called real America. Peck was a committed liberal who opposed the Vietnam War, marched for civil rights, and used his platform to advocate for social justice. These weren't just political differences. For both men, these positions represented fundamental moral commitments. Their first public clash came at a 1968 Hollywood fundraiser for Lyndon Johnson's presidential campaign. Peck was there supporting the administration's civil rights agenda, despite his growing opposition to Vietnam policy. Wayne attended specifically to confront what he called Hollywood's bleeding hearts. According to multiple witnesses, including columnist Joyce Haber, who covered the event for the Los Angeles Times, Wayne walked up to Peck's table and said loudly, "I hear you think we should cut and run from Vietnam. That's not very American of you, Greg." Peck stood up slowly, his 6'3" frame matching Wayne's height exactly. "What's not very American, Duke, is thinking we have the right to destroy another country in the name of democracy." Wayne's face flushed red. "If we had more men like you in charge," he said, "we'd have lost World War II." Peck's response was quiet but devastating. "If we had more men like you in charge, we'd still be fighting it." From that night forward, their mutual antipathy was public knowledge. They refused to appear at the same industry events. When the American Film Institute tried to honor both men at their 1973 gala, Peck declined, sending a telegram that simply said, "I have a prior commitment." Everyone knew what that meant. In 1974, Universal proposed a Western epic called The 49ers that would star both Wayne and Peck as brothers on opposite sides of the California gold rush. The script was strong, the budget was massive, and the director, Sam Peckinpah, was at the height of his powers. Both actors were sent the script simultaneously. Wayne called the studio within hours. "I'll do it on one condition," he reportedly said. "Get me someone else. Anyone but Peck." When studio executives contacted Peck, he hadn't even finished reading. His response was equally unambiguous. "I wouldn't share a screen with John Wayne if it was the last role in Hollywood." The project died instantly. According to Peckinpah biographer David Weddell, the director was furious. "I tried to convince both of them," Peckinpah said in a 1976 interview. "I told them they were being children. But they hated each other on a level I'd never seen before. It wasn't personal. It was bigger than that. They each thought the other represented everything poisoning America." In 1979, when John Wayne was dying of cancer, a reporter asked Peck if he would consider visiting his old rival. Peck's answer was cold and unambiguous. "I wish Duke no suffering," he said, "but we have nothing to say to each other. We never did." When Wayne died that June, Peck attended the funeral, but multiple observers noted he sat in the back and left immediately after the service without speaking to anyone. Years later, in one of his final interviews, Peck reflected on their feud with something approaching sadness. "Duke and I represented two different Americas," he said. "Neither of us was willing to compromise what we believed. Maybe that was noble, maybe it was just stubborn, but I never regretted standing my ground, even if it meant losing whatever friendship we might have had." Orson Welles, the final name Gregory Peck revealed according to his biographer, was perhaps the most unexpected. Orson Welles was a certified genius, the man who created Citizen Kane at age 25 and revolutionized both radio and cinema. Peck admired Welles's talent enormously. But admiration and personal tolerance, as their 1956 collaboration on Moby Dick proved, were entirely different things. Director John Huston had assembled an extraordinary cast for his adaptation of Melville's novel. Peck would play Captain Ahab, the role of a lifetime. Welles would play Father Mapple, delivering the famous sermon in the New Bedford Chapel. It should have been a meeting of titans, a collaboration between two of cinema's most respected actors. Instead, according to production designer Stephen Grimes, it became a masterclass in how genius and discipline can be completely incompatible. Welles arrived in Ireland for location shooting 2 weeks late, offering no apology or explanation. When he finally appeared on set, he was carrying a stack of books about whaling and immediately began lecturing Huston about everything the director was doing wrong. Welles's approach to the Father Mapple sermon was characteristically grand. He wanted complete control over the staging, the lighting, and the editing. He rewrote Melville's dialogue, adding lengthy passages of his own invention. When Huston objected, Welles dismissed him. "John, you're a fine director of action," he said, "but I know how to handle language." Peck, waiting to film his own scenes, watched this unfold with increasing frustration. He had spent months preparing for Ahab, studying the novel, researching whaling history, and working on the character's physical and psychological deterioration. Welles had apparently done nothing but show up and assume his brilliance was preparation enough. During one of Welles's takes, he suddenly stopped mid-sermon, turned to Peck, who was watching off camera, and said, "Gregory, darling, you're going to have to do more than glower and limp. Ahab requires madness. Do you even understand madness?" According to cinematographer Oswald Morris, Peck's face went white. He walked off set and didn't return for the rest of the day. Production continued, but Peck avoided Welles entirely. When Huston tried to arrange a dinner to smooth things over, Peck declined. "I can't spend an evening listening to Orson explain how brilliant Orson is," he reportedly told the director. Welles, for his part, seemed genuinely confused about why Peck was angry. To him, offering criticism was a gift. He expected gratitude. The film was completed, and Welles's sermon sequence was indeed magnificent. Critics singled it out as one of the film's highlights, but Peck never acknowledged it publicly. When asked about working with Welles in later years, his response was measured but pointed. "Orson was a genius," he said, "but genius without consideration for others is just elaborate selfishness." Welles, in his later years, told a group of film students that Peck was a good man but utterly without imagination. He approached every role like a tax accountant approaches a ledger. When this comment made its way back to Peck, his response was characteristically restrained. "Orson confused chaos with creativity," he said. "I never made that mistake." The revelations about Gregory Peck's hidden resentments sent shockwaves through what remained of classic Hollywood. Representatives for the Brando, Wayne, and Burton estates all declined to comment when contacted by the press. Sinatra's daughter Nancy said only that her father had enormous respect for Mr. Peck's talent, regardless of their personal differences. Other industry veterans confirmed Peck's accounts. Director Arthur Penn told Variety in a 2003 interview, "Greg was the most professional actor I ever worked with, and that's exactly why certain people drove him crazy. He couldn't understand how anyone could treat this work with anything less than complete commitment." In his final interview before his death in June 2003, Peck was asked if he regretted revealing these long-buried conflicts. His answer was revealing. "I spent 50 years being diplomatic," he said, "being Hollywood's gentleman. But there's a difference between being professional and being dishonest. These men tested me in ways that still sting. Maybe that's petty. Maybe I should have been bigger. But I'm too old now to pretend I didn't feel what I felt." He paused, looking out the window of his Los Angeles home. "Besides," he added with the faintest smile, "there are a few more names I haven't mentioned yet. Maybe someday." Gregory Peck died 3 weeks after that interview. If he had more names on his list, he took them to his grave. But the 5 he revealed painted a portrait of Hollywood's gentleman that was far more human, far more complicated, and ultimately far more honest than the saintly image he'd maintained for half a century. What do you think? Were these feuds justified by principle, or did pride play a bigger role than Peck wanted to admit? Let us know in the comments.